Hi, and welcome to the Personal Side of Business, where every business has a story. I'm your host, Jet Bunditwong. Today, my guest is John A. King, someone who has been through an extraordinary personal journey, has done the work on himself, is now giving others real, intentional tools for their life. John, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, g'day, mate. How are you?
I'm
Nice to
great.
be here,
Yeah.
brother.
Thank you. Thank you. And we are in Dallas. This is a great journey for me to be able to talk to you. I think we've been connecting for a few months, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was delighted to be able to finally connect with you. So I always ask, beginning, and I think this means more for a guest like you. How did we get here? You know,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Let's try to
Yeah.
capture it in a few moments.
Well, my doctorate's actually in theology, but I tell people it's turning shit into fertilizer, and I because I think that's really what I've done most of my
Yeah.
life. There is no clear arc. People talk about business going on this trajectory, life going on this trajectory, and I think that's part of the challenge. We live most of our life from the outside in, but it's not until we come to a place of crisis that we realize this thing's a mess, man. We're all working this out. So how I got here is, I I've been through a range of experiences that I think have really forged me into who I am, and I think that's part of the journey that I still feel I'm on.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to capture your whole story in this one podcast. And I think when people, if you get a chance, put the links in the YouTube and everything to be able to check out John, his story, and what he's doing. I think it's amazing, and what you've become from everything that I've seen is even more remarkable, right? To I think when people get through these life traumas and be able to change themselves, rebuild themselves, and then be able to help other people, that's even more remarkable. Let's talk about a little bit of um, what you're doing with the Phoenix Collective, right? That's something that I was watching. You're helping, especially men that have gone through PTSD trauma, dealing with stress, and be able to have these tools that they can help themselves, right? Let's talk a little more about that.
Just to give a little bit of context, I was raised in a very abusive environment. I was sexually abused and trafficked as a child, and so I had recall of that at 45. Um, I think it was 2008. And at that stage, I was blowing and going. I was making $750,000 a year. I was traveling the world, speaking in all the big non-profit and for-profit organizations. And I had this recall of what happened to me as a child, which led to the total implosion of my life. And we'll talk a lot about anti-trafficking, and I love the fact that people do, but they'll talk about for another word, it's the sexy side of it, the rescue. They won't ever talk about the recovery from trauma. And I think we underestimate how long it actually takes to get your feet under you when you've been through a very traumatic season. And from personal experience, it's about 10 to 15 years. So what we've done with the Phoenix Collective is was in a privileged position to be able to have about $300,000 and 15 years to spend on getting well. And I'm very grateful that my business has supported me through that. And so what we've done with the Phoenix Collective is take those 15 years and $300,000 and condense it so that people hopefully don't have to go through 10 or 15 years of wondering, how do I scrape this together into fertilizer? But how can I get ahead and move forward and be able to prosper in the midst of this thing?
Yeah, there's kind of two components to this that I find really interesting. Is one is when you're going to seek help or talking to a therapist, right? There's could be times that therapist has not gone through what you've gone through. You've gone through it. Like you've gone through it hard in your life, and now you're able to talk to people that have gone through it as well. Can you just talk a little bit about um, how much value you see in that?
The reason I believe I am as far along as I am is the therapist I met was an older lady who had had a similar childhood, and she just got me. Um, the thought of sitting down and talking to someone about what I went through as a child without context, it was never going to happen. I think it's imperative. Now, what I found really interesting, Jet, is that I've got a lot of, because of our non-trafficking work, anti-trafficking work, got a lot of military and police friends. And we'll sometimes sit down as guys do, and you're having a beverage of choice and a cigar, and you're chatting, and we'll swap stories, war stories. They'll look at me and go, bloody hell, mate, I'd never want to go through your crap. And I'll go, dude, I never want to go through your crap. But because there's this commonality about having to deal with trauma, you end up with a common language. And it's not the cause of the trauma, it's the issue, because we've all got stuff we had to overcome. It's the tools you need to put in your toolbox to overcome the trauma. And I think what you're alluding to is it makes a big difference when you're sitting shoulder to shoulder, as men like to do it, with someone who just gets it. And you don't have to try and unpack it and wind it out. You can just say, okay, I get you. We can start here and we can walk together.
Yeah. Yeah. Share a little bit about me. I came from a broken family where my father was abusive towards my mother, me, my sister. And it wasn't until probably in my early 40s where I started seeking help in therapy and be able to talk to people about it. And I felt like as I was resolving some of the things that were going on with me, it made me have better relationships with other people as well,
Yeah.
right? I was holding this in. Do you see that with your clients as well?
So my cultural heritage is I'm an Indigenous Australian, so I'm an Australian Aboriginal, and there's a concept amongst our people where we talk about sitting with something. You sit with grief, and you sit with stories, and you sit with your elders, etc. When a man can learn to sit with what he's uncomfortable in, it gives you a level of insight that allows you to communicate it without the feelings of guilt, worry, or pressure that a lot of us carry within Western societies. And I think when you go through those exercises of talking, I think it's a therapeutic or an artificial sense of what I learned culturally, is that you're articulating this grief or these struggles, and now all of a sudden it's a funny thing, man. It's like it sits over you like a cloth, or it washes off you. Instead of it being weighing you down, it just goes, okay, I can sit with this and it can come and go, and it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make, because I've always had this notion that culture, your nurture, your upbringing plays a part in how you're going to deal with the stress like that, right?
Yeah.
Do you see that and you don't have to be specific about certain cultures, but do you see that in certain cultures coming to you and like, okay, I've seen your culture, and it is not something, I mean, in Southern California, we talk about this a lot where with Mexican culture, it's like the guys never want to, you don't want to show that you're broken down, you're the provider, right? You have to keep going like that. How do you deal with someone that comes to you and you're like, okay, there's it's not just about you and the stress. There's actually a lot of upbringing that we have to deal with.
So when I do it, I've become aware that women resolve things face to face. Women will sit around. Traditional therapy is wonderful for women because you're sitting opposite someone and having a chat. Whereas men resolve things shoulder to shoulder. And you will learn more about a man in a deer stand than sometimes their wife or their children will ever know. And you will sit down watching a ball game, and there'll be that one comment, oh, mate, how's the family and the kids? And the other guy will go, yeah, you've got that microsecond of an opportunity to go, hey, mate, what's going on? And if you miss that, the dude ain't ever coming up again, you know what I mean? So there's that understanding. So when I'm dealing with guys, it's like I'm looking for micro openings. And if I miss it, I'll stop it and wind it back and unpack it again. And I think there's the overlay of men as a culture. Men and who we are. We are providers, protectors, directors, correctors. That's who we are. then we've got our Western overlay, and then we've got our cultural overlay. So it becomes, it's a little bit like a Venn diagram. And, Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, man, I'm always trying to find the 20%. And if I can find the 20%, then I can help someone impact the rest of their life, substantially.
Yeah. And what is that feeling for you when these men are coming back and they're like, "Hey, you've completely changed my life"? Like,
I think, and I'm not trying to be trite. What the thing I love more than anything is when they come back and they say, "I've changed my life," because I value that more than "you've really changed my life." I mean that sincerely. A lot of therapists or coaches are putting themselves in a position of client dependency because a lot of it's tied to finance, which we're in a position where that's just not our case. I love it when I'm walking with a guy and he gets so awakened to life afresh, he wants to pay it forward. And that's when we get our scholarships from for our foundation, and they bring people in. They go, "Dude, you've really helped change." Well, no, thank you, but you've really helped change your life. I had the privilege of walking with you. Well, bro, like, what do I do? Well, then you go find someone, and let's do this together now. So that whole thing that we're in the midst of at the moment with the Phoenix Collective, bro, it's got some moxie.
yeah,
Yeah, it really does, man. It's got some moxie going.
because I think that speaks to what said, your website and your videos, and it seems like the literature is that you're trying to give them tools to be able to use it. Can you tell me a tool that you find one of the most important for someone dealing with PTSD, stress, or trauma?
I'll give you a routine which will probably solve 80% of the trauma. I know it sounds like a big statement, but from experience, go to bed at the same time every night, get up at the same time every night, every day, have a breakfast, a high fat, high protein, low carb breakfast, and that's it. That's step number one. Just do that. That's going to solve probably 50 to 60% of your problems. Get in the sun, go for a walk 3 to 4 times a week. It's really that simple. Your body wants to reset, but people with trauma needs to manage what that reset looks like. Stay off red food coloring. Stay off doom scrolling 2 hours before you go to bed. Turn that off. Make sure you get some water in. Go to the gym like it's a prescription. And so some of those very simple things that we all know to do, and most guys love to do, but it's just, oh man, it's not going to work. Yeah, it does. Can I story for you? So I'm a private pilot, and I was flying, and my instructor was teaching me that when you take off together and we've got to go to point B, if I get 1 degree off, by the time I travel my 200 miles, I'm so far off course, I'll never get back on. In Western society, we want to popcorn 30 seconds everything and solve the problem. But it took me so far to get off track. And I remember in my own life, I wanted this answer now. I wanted to solve it now. And I was just failing forward all the time. And I said, okay, stop. You're just doing this wrong. He said, how much can you realistically expect to get done? Well, if I could change 1% a day, I'd be fine. Okay, that means I'd change, 300% in a year. Yeah, it's impossible. That ain't going to happen. Okay, what if it's 1% a week? Well, that's 50%. You're too lazy. It ain't going to happen. So I'd negotiated with myself. My goal, my big goal in my life is 1% a month. Just 1% a month, which means in 8 years, I've totally revolutionized my life. Now, 16 years looking back, I've done that twice now. Yeah, I've done it twice. So, I think we overestimate what we can do in 12 months and underestimate what the creator can do in 10 years.
Yeah, and those 2 points, right? The change that you've done twice. What do you think what was a new version of you in each of those times? If you can look back, go, that was a key moment.
So I had recall of what happened to me as a kid. That was John Ageddon. That was the end of John 1.0. So John 1.0 was very goal-driven, focused. And mate, I had all the calendars. Bro, I could outdo you on to-do lists. You know what I mean? I was that guy. John 2.0, after I had recall, literally neurologically my brain shifted. And I went from being goal-driven, analytical John to cigar-smoking poet sitting under a tree John. And neurologically, John 2.0 could not do post-John Ageddon what John 1.0 literally could do with skill set. So the first round of this thing was me getting to know who I was. Who am I post-trauma, post this recall? I was stuck with 2.0. John 1.0, he was never coming back, man. You know, and I didn't know John 2.0. But then I realized I really didn't like John 1.0. He was just who I was. But I didn't like that guy, man. He was so anal. Like, he never had fun. He was miserable his entire bloody life.
Were you overcorrecting, you felt like? Like, after all that, and you're like, okay, now I got to be this super version of, heightened version.
So, underlying all of this stuff, and so, you know, ADHD and I'm autistic, high functioning. I'm a very good masker of my behavior. So John 1.0, and because I grew up as I did as a kid, I would have to be able to read a room and know who was going to hurt me the least. I knew I was going to get abused and I knew I was going to hurt, but I had to micro slice who was going to hurt me the least, enamor myself to that person. So my whole life was spent masking behavior and pretending. So John 1.0 didn't know who he was. He was the accumulation of what he thought everybody else thought he should do, say, believe, like, try. I mean, across the gamut. So when John 2.0 turns up, he goes, what the hell? Who the hell? What is that stuff? You hate that stuff. I do hate that stuff. But what do I like? Yeah, I don't know. What do you like? I don't know. What do I like? So the whole process of this 1% has been discovering me. And I was a very good liar as a child. Lacking authenticity was one of my biggest challenges because I lied to survive. And so John 2.0 is fanatically committed to authentic relationships, conversations, and activities. To my own detriment to some degree, because John 2.0 is still pretty new at all this.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, man. Like, I don't know.
How are you enjoying John 2.0?
Dude, I like the guy.
Yeah.
I do. I like hanging out with him.
Guy,
Like, he loves a good cigar. He loves a whiskey, just 1 or 2 shots, like 2 or 3 times a week. He loves to write books. And he didn't realize he loved to write books. Although John 1.0 wrote 27 of them and self-published, John 2.0 is like, dude, you should write books. Should I? Well, you've written 27. Have I? I didn't know that. So John 2.0 is wanting to be a full-time writer and an author. John 1.0 has done the budget and it's not going to work financially. John 2.0 is, fuck you, man. We're going to do this thing.
So do you also think getting into certain age groups of, like, you know, we were talking about before, being 20, 30, 40, 50, has really played into the ability for you to be able to express yourself even more, you know?
I think so, mate. And when we were talking, it was like, in your 20s, you go where you're told, dress what you're told, believe what you do, eat, you know, whatever. And when I say told, everybody around you frames that world. 20. 30, it's a safe. You're living from the outside in. By the time guys get to their 40s, the world's branded it as a midlife crisis. I think it's a midlife realignment. You realize that your purpose, mission, vision, and value, those fundamental calls, and we talk about this in the collective, are out of line. So when I had recall of the events, what was really shattering was that internally I was out of alignment. Like, my memories and the things that had been done to me and by me were outline and outside of who I was and what I was about. So you get to a stage in life where something breaks. Most men have recall of sexual abuse and trafficking and heavy trauma between 35 and 45. That's when it really hits home, yeah. Most women will be able to articulate it from their child about 18, 20. Most men, it's not going to happen. That's why we're seeing a lot of the challenge. That's why suicide amongst men is a pandemic, because most of the guys are trying to process this trauma, but they've been living in a facade for such a long time. So here we are in our 40s and our 50s, and we're in a marriage where we're really just college roommates. You know, we hate our kids because our kids hate us. We hate everything. We hate ourselves. Because somewhere along the line, this whole thing, this whole lie is just, it's not sincere. It's not authentic. And I think when we come up in age, people say it's because the runway's shorter than from in front than behind. I actually don't think it's the case. I think it's a case you get to the point of going, I just don't want to anymore. I just don't want to do this. And it's like, and whatever that to do this is, unfortunately, sometimes it's relationships. Most of the time, it's career and behavior set. But there's not a good way for guys to transition, again, as we've talked about, into real conversations with other real men on how to do this without casualties.
You think if men were given that skill and tool to be able to communicate with themselves or each other early on in life, you think it would make a dramatic difference in how we grow up, by the time we're in our 40s and 50s?
So the misnomer that, big men don't cry hasn't helped us any. The other challenge is that we've tried to feminize men so much, men don't know who they are. So what am I going to do? What, run around and like just have feelings and shit? It's like, I don't know what to do that, man. That goes against everything I'm wired. But I can't like just be a guy and hang out with guys and talk, because guys will talk to each other. So often you hear, well, what do you talk about in the locker room? And men just get together. So when men get together and talk, most of the time they're talking about their wives and their children and how they want to be better men. I'm telling you, 80 to 90% of the conversations. Just came out of hunting season in Texas, spent 4 weeks in deer stands. You know what we talked about? We talked about scripture, going to church, how we're so proud of our boys and our daughters. What can I do to help my wife? Man, she hates herself. She's a bit fat. Well, have you thought about putting her in the back of the truck and driving around the block? Yeah, I have, but instead I brought a $40,000 gym. How the hell are you expecting to pay for a $40,000 home gym? Well, I don't know, but my wife, she hates herself, and I don't like the fact that my best friend hates herself. So that's what men really talk about. And unless men deliberately put themselves into situations, and part of it's cultural, back to your point on culture, is I've found that American men are incredibly lonely. Australian, culturally, back in the day, men interacted and we had mates and we sat at the pub together and we played football together and we did things together. American men are very lonely, and I think part of it's because of a hard-driven capitalistic society. We've got this threat thing that's going on. And unfortunately, American men don't make mates well. They don't know how to do that. And that is a cultural thing. And that's what I spend a lot of time trying to help guys with.
Yeah, so far in, your career, have you seen, is there a certain country culture where men interact with each other a lot easier than, U.S. men or just men in general?
Yeah. I think the Australian one is, but particularly, so I'm Warramungu and Brani. That's our term for, I am Kari Maniwani, a man who comes up out of the red dirt. In our culture, we have men's business and women's business. And that's tied into our songs and our laws and our ceremony. But often, as men, we get together as men just to talk. And we're talking about, maybe it's hunting, maybe it's the songs, maybe it's ceremony, maybe it's our law and our stories. But in that whole process that we're doing, we are literally sitting around a fire side by side, talking and engaging. Mm. And so out of all of that comes a life and the kids, and this little kid's being a bugger. What are you going to do with him? Well, let's take him out and feed him to the crocodiles. Yeah, rah, rah, that's going to be great. But instead, why don't we do this? Okay, we'll do that instead. So I learnt so much, and I've only been reconnected from the family for probably 2.5 years now. And I learnt so much in that time about the value of sitting shoulder to shoulder with other men. And I think that's part of the richness of Indigenous cultures, is that there's a different wiring, and we're all Indigenous somewhere. There's a different wiring that happens when you sit with other people around a commonality other than our issues. And I think in our society today, when we get together, we're getting together in a men's group to talk about a problem instead of just in a group in a deer stand to talk about life. And you realize that, man, his life's really shitty. Mine's okay. Yeah. And there's a thing about a man being vulnerable to share his pain with other men that actually gives them courage to go forward.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible thing to watch.
Yeah. I think just growing up now, being in my 40s, to be able to see men that have done work, even a little bit, you can see that, be able to be able to connect with their families, wives, and each other. And then you've seen guys that I have friends that committed suicide, shut down because and I can tell through their lives, they got further and further away from people and kind of
Yeah, that's good, brother.
isolated,
Yeah.
themselves. And I felt like if probably they would have had connections to certain people that were pivotal in changing their lives, it probably would still be around today. And but
That's a big question.
right, like how do we get those? How do we keep those guys or get them to be able to see connection to whoever they need to get to?
Don't you think it comes to a point where I've never believed that suicide is a coward's game, and I've had to deal with suicidal ideation in my life myself, and I remember when I was looking at it, it was a very calculated move because I'd been told by in my under my previous administration, my ex-wife, that I was worthless, that I was never going to get better, never going to amount to anything, and the best thing I could do was to remove myself from the planet. So I remember actually looking at it as a mathematical equation. I'm being told that I'll never get better. I'm being told that all I'm doing is hurting people. Am I prepared to sacrifice my life for the good of my family to remove myself from the situation? Yes, I am. I'm prepared to do that. Very cold and calculated, but it's like, okay, let's see if there's another way around
I feel
this.
like this part of John 1
Yeah,
was doing the math.
analyzing
Like,
this thing. Yeah, analyzing this thing. And on 2 occasions, actually, my wife Melissa, who looked at someone else declared trash and saw treasure, on those occasions she actually rang me, and she talked me off the bottle and the barrel on 2 occasions, because to your point, someone was there. Now she didn't know what was going on. She just made a random phone call. And what I encourage men to do, have you ever had that prompting at 3 a.m.? And it's really good now because you've got a send later function on your phone to reach out to a guy, say hi, or send an email. I encourage men to see that as a prompting and to take action on that immediately, because you never know who's on the other side of it and where they're up to. And so, yeah.
I've thought it's interesting. I've thought of this a few times with male friends and close ones that I know, like, haven't heard from in a while, and then I'll get a random phone call or text in random hour, right? 11:30 at night, 1 o'clock. Hey, how are you doing? And it's not really about how you're doing. Yeah, it's there's something that they're either wanting to get off their chest or just connect with you on something. And I always make it a point, like, I got to call them back the next chance I get, just because to hear. And going back to what you've talked about, sometimes you don't even talk about anything.
No.
But it's just
Yeah.
hearing each other. Yeah. And he
Exactly.
goes, "Hey, it's great to hear you. Great." And I'm like, "You call me." I think the first line is, "Oh, you call me just to talk about the car." But really, it's just like, I just want to hear your voice and
Yes.
be to connect again. And
I got a picture on my phone. It's of a guy lighting down. He's sunbaking, and in front of him, at crutch level, is a mallard duck, with a long, tall green neck. And at the bottom it says, "I'm sending you an inappropriate duck pic." So I keep that on my phone, and I send my mates duck pics every now and again. Like, if I think of a guy, I'll send him a random duck pic, and it's like this totally, and he go, "What the hell is this thing?" And then they laugh, it's funny. And when I feel prompted like that with guys, I'll just send them something like that, because then they ring back and go, "What the hell's this, man?" Or I got one mate in particular, tragic. His wife committed suicide, and it was tragic. Broke his heart, and I can't fathom that. But every week or two, I'll send him a picture saying, "How you going, you fag? You haven't gone to the gym, have you, you big fatty?" And I'll send him pictures of, like, Austin Powers in a fat suit. And say, "What are you doing, you loser?" Because here he is in the middle of his grief. He hasn't had a normal conversation for 3 months, 4 months. And I don't think you have to. I just think, like you've said, guys just want to know someone's there.
And there's this, I think, depending on the group and friendship and the length of a friendship, there's this comedy language like you're talking about that the friendship will have.
Yes.
And you're like these tragic moments, you're like, that's all I needed, right? You know me enough that you're gonna send me something funny just to lighten the mood, but what it really says is I care about you. I want to be there for you. And sometimes I look at those moments from day to day and get so busy that you forget about those little sparks that you have with from men to men, right? And you go, I got to reconnect with these guys again once in a while. Just to we're all busy. I have these guy friends I can every time we get together, they get stressed out. We talk about life, drink, and then they're just like that was just nice just to have, just to be able to talk, to sort of wrap up here. Want to I want you to share, I think, what you have for the future, because I know that you're planning some stuff to come out in the next couple of years, right? Between your books and stuff. Can you just spend a couple minutes talking about what you plan?
So, I had the privilege of securing an agent out in New York, and my memoir's coming out. We're in the process of talking with publishers at the moment. And then I've written 3 fictional novels. And one is a trilogy that's based on the work we did with the tail end of the Epstein case and the Peter Nygaard, the guy who took over from him. It's all about human trafficking and the billionaire elites and how they groom people. So it really is an expose, names change based on true events. And the one I'm dealing with at the moment, I've just finished up, called Till It's Done, is on military sexual trauma. See, here's another conversation. We always hear about the women that have unfortunately experienced it. Just as many men numerically have experienced sexual trauma in the military in the US. It's about 950,000 and 950,000. Now, statistically, they're different because there's far more men, but purely numerically. Yet, women will be compensated and women will be helped by the DOD and the VA. Men who don't self-report just are denied service. So, I want to have a conversation about that. So that's very big for us is launching. I want to do something I want to do for the next. This is John 3.0. John 3.0 wants to be a writer. That's what John 3.0 is. So he's doing it. He's going, okay, let's jump off this cliff and see how it could happen. John 1.0 is going, have you run the budget? Seriously, have you had a look at the line item? John 2.0 is going, I'm thinking it's really good, but, maybe we need to talk to our therapist about it. John 3.
Yeah, I think your both sides of your minds are going to be fighting to get these books out, right? But I mean, you've said you do a lot of this stuff so that you can help the community and not really be about.
And that's what the Phoenix Collective's about. And as I said, we've took 15 years and $300,000 and we put it down. And dude, it's ridiculous. Like, it's $27 for life. I know it sounds dumb, but like, I hate subscription services. I hate the fact that you have to pay for everything and it's ongoing and everyone's bite. It's like I'm saying, okay, here's $300,000, 15 years, and I'm just going to give it to you. Because $27, yeah, because you're not going to value it if you don't pay for it. So you're going to pay for the price of one lunch and sit your lazy butt down and watch something. And it's 24 months worth of continuous self-learning. If you want to do group coaching or individual coaching, you can. We've got 7 more courses this year, masterclasses on trauma recovery and performance enhancement for free that we give away. Every month we hold it, and people go to the Phoenix Collective page, phoenixcollective.app. They can just sign up and come along to those things. Because, brother, I'm firmly convinced, and part of it is a cultural thing, that you do reap, and my spiritual belief, that you reap what you sow. That I can sow over here into people's lives and reap over there in another way financially. And I want to do that. I'm in a position where I'm able to be a blessing to those that need to be blessed. And I really want to do that.
Yeah. And it's credible. You mentioned that you're running businesses so you can give back. And I think that's
the
an amazing
for
thing.
The vision.
Yeah. Amazing. And where can people find you?
drjohnaking.com, the website. Dr. John A. King on, I think, every social platform. And we'd love to connect. And if they want to come to our courses, please, you can get there at drjohnaking.com or phoenixcollective.app. Sign up for these free courses. Sign up for the launch list for the books. When the books come out, I'd love to send you an email and let you know they're available. So we'd love to let's connect with you.
Thank you so much, John. And like I said, there's no way to capture what John has been through and how he has rebuilt himself and is helping others. So please check out his website. And I would love to be able to catch up with you again after your 47th book comes out. And
We want to do a virtual book tour, and I'm going to use the emotional capital. John, 1 point I was going to take the guy's name down. John 3 goes, maybe we'll have a beverage. John 2 goes, no, I really think you need to.
you have these AI of you just taking different versions of you.
I wish it was AI. Then I could train the bloody thing. But we're going to do a virtual book tour when the books come out, and I'd love to reconnect with you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you very much, John. And this is the Personal Side of Business.